Hi everyone, welcome to Easy FI University in my FI story series. Today I have wonderful Michelle Oppelt join me. Michelle is a really ecstatic figure. When I met her a couple months ago online, she struck me with someone who's not taking any excuses and just go ahead and do things that is very entrepreneur. So she is a mom of four, and she also owns two businesses. So one that is very successful, Smarty Cat TV, which they teach kids to have basically experiment with science and have fun. And she kind of talked a little bit more about this. And the other business that she has started is a multifamily women's mastermind, which gathers women together and talk about real estate multifamily specifically and help up level everybody else. So they have regular podcasts, they have meetups when before pandemic time, meet up in person, and then also virtual happy hours. So Michelle, it's really great to have you on our show today, and then we're looking forward to kind of dive into your personal story and your business story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So Michelle, like we always ask our the interviewers this question to start with, which is, hey, how did you become an entrepreneur? Like, because with our listener, most of them has W-2 job, but they're looking at the other side of fence. But if you have to think back in your childhood, tell us a little bit about story that kind of really struck you and foster you as an entrepreneur.
If we're going all the way back to childhood, I was kind of entrepreneurial from the beginning. I was that kid that did the lemonade stand and like went all in. We had a jingle and flyers and all
Yeah.
this marketing stuff. I remember I used to buy like bulk lollipops and then upsell them at at school. I used to have a snow shoveling business. I'm from the Northeast, so we would go and pass out flyers and shovel people's driveways when it snowed.
Yeah.
All kinds of things like that. I had this little thing called Odd Jobs, where it was basically flyers I put around town that, I'll walk your dog, I'll babysit your child, I'll anything
Oh,
I
that's
could
very
do.
interesting.
It was funny. It was called Odd Jobs, and I think I got maybe 2 phone calls from that because it was a whole cluster of random
Yeah.
things that I said I would do for people. But I always just kind of had that work for myself mentality, or just had an idea and would kind of run with it. So I was lucky in that aspect, but actually, I wasn't surrounded by entrepreneurs growing up. Kind of had the
Hmm.
typical childhood where you think you've got to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. And I was going to become a teacher, a biology teacher.
Hmm.
And it was kind of right out of college. I had my first son, and I didn't want to go straight into a teaching, full time, where I'd have to put him in daycare full time. So I started trying to figure out ways that I could, do part-time work and stay with him. And that's kind of what spawned the idea for Smarty Cat Kids. Was I was working at a preschool, and they said they had this really terrific science program. So I was very excited. So my son was going to go to the preschool. I was going to teach in the room next to him. That way
Yeah.
I could still be a helicopter mom. It was ridiculous. But when I got there, I realized the science program was really lacking. I mean, it wasn't what I expected at all. So my husband at the time had said, if there's a problem, like do something about it. Why don't you create your own science lessons? And so I did
Yeah.
that. And I just started kind of teaching these classes for local neighborhood kids, rented a room at a church.
Hmm.
And pretty quickly, the recreation department next door heard about it. And then they said, hey,
Yeah.
can you come do some science shows for us? And I said, yeah, sure. And then I kind of became like a one-woman traveling science show. And then it kept getting requested more and more.
That's awesome. So I kind of want to just also go back to a little bit on the childhood a little bit. So what kind of influenced you? Because we're trying to get into the mindset of entrepreneur, and then
Yeah.
like what kind of really influence? Is there a person or a family situation that get you out there and then doing the odd job? Like what kind of gives you the idea of like, hey, I can just make this work like by offering my service to other
Yeah.
people?
I really didn't have, it was kind of, for anybody that's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I definitely grew up in more of the poor dad type atmosphere, where it was go to school, get a steady job, play it safe. My dad's a
Hmm.
pastor. My mom worked in a nonprofit. So there really wasn't encouragement for what I was
Uh-huh.
doing. And actually, when I, when I finished college and told them I was starting Smarty Cat Kids, it was, I think the very first thing my mom said to me was, you do know that 85% of new businesses fail, right? I said, yep,
Yeah.
thanks, mom.
I'm that 5%. That's great.
Yeah, I said, well, that means, yeah, 15% succeed. So, there wasn't really that encouragement growing up. I
Yeah.
think it was just a natural personality trait. I think I've met a lot of other entrepreneurs too that just have that natural
Hmm.
curiosity, ambition, resourcefulness, I think is like probably the most important attribute. So
Yeah.
it just kind of came naturally for me. I wish I could say it was somebody, some hero I looked up to, but not so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And then your school upbringing is also pretty regular. It
Traditional,
wasn't,
yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting. I'm always like fascinated by that because, we also try to help people to figure out if they have kids, like what they kind of install the mentality being at. But some people are just all like that, they're maybe just a self-starter to start with. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So after you went to college, by the way, you had your first kid very early out of college. So there must be a little bit more challenge over there where you're having a kid, and also try to establish yourself. So how do you kind of balance that at
Yeah, it was
first?
it was a little bit tricky. I got lucky that I started a business that was for his age group.
Yeah.
So he would come to classes with me, and
Yeah.
and it would get tricky when I would have multiple classes going on and he's getting bored and it was tricky. And even to this day, now I have 4 kids. My kids are involved in the business,
Hmm.
and that was really important to me to make that um, an attribute of what I'm doing. To make sure that they're able to participate, and it's not just mommy's working all the time. It's yeah, but I can help her, and it's fun. A lot of the stuff we do is fun. They don't have to be a part of the midnight editing sessions that I'm doing, but they
Right.
can be
Right.
they can be a part of all the fun science stuff. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
again, just being adaptable and resourceful. You just got to figure out what you can do with where you're at and what you have.
Gotcha. And then, so that's really interesting because you touched on strategically structure your time and then get your family involved into the business. So this is kind of how 2 different ways to find time, essentially doing that. So can you kind of walk us through like a little bit of your typical day? Now you have 4 kids and running this like whole business, right? How do
Yeah.
you kind of structure that?
Well, here lately it's atypical because we'll get into it in a little bit, but when COVID hit, our business model became obsolete. That what we were doing all in-person classes, camps, we were getting contracted by schools to run their enrichment. So obviously when schools and recs and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts and all of that shut down, nobody
Mm,
was meeting in person. All of our contracts got canceled. So we
yeah.
went to zero overnight. And now we're in the process of rebuilding and relaunching virtually.
Hmm.
So right now it's crazy because it's 24/7. I mean, every waking moment we're trying to build up this structure to get it ready. So we can launch. We actually launch tomorrow.
Nice.
As we're filming this, it's tomorrow. So it's a lot of work. But yeah, a typical day is get up before the kids, try to get
Hmm.
as much computer work as I can done, then get them up, get them ready for school, get them off to school, and then, do the stuff at home. I have my 2-year-old home with me, and
Hmm.
my other kids are in high school, middle school, elementary. But things are
Hmm.
crazy right now with school, and they don't all go every day,
Yeah.
and it's a
Yeah.
crazy schedule. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, during their waking hours, that's when I'm trying to do the things that they can be involved in.
Hmm.
There's a little bit of time where they do just, have to
Yeah.
entertain themselves or let mommy work. But then when they go to bed, that's when I get back on the computer. So it's tricky, but you make it work.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then, so how many hours of sleep do you get every day?
Lately, not as many as I need to, but as a general rule, I try to get 7 hours of sleep a night. It's
Nice.
kind of important. Yeah, I used to be that kind of person. I can run off 5 hours and I'd feel great. But as I get older, it's not the case anymore.
Yeah. So do you have like a kind of like a daily routine or, something that kind of motivates you to keep going? Because you usually can only go as hard as like 400 miles an hour,
Yeah,
like for a period of time. And you just kind of, I do completely
need to
shut
take a
down for like
break.
a couple of
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do, my self-care kind of stuff. I follow the Miracle Morning,
Hmm.
which right now has been kind of slacking just because, like I said, every waking moment we're like getting ready for this big project to release.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, when things are normal, normal, right? What's
Yeah.
normal anymore? I do my miracle morning, try and get my headset right. If I'm starting to feel super overwhelmed, I'm not going to do my best work. A lot of the work I do is very creative based.
Hmm.
And if I'm anxious and stressed, it doesn't help me. So I'll
Yeah.
take a break and read a book or I love impact theory, so I listen to them a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah, just try to reset your mindset and take breathers. But I think when you're really passionate about what you're working on, like I absolutely love doing this stuff for kids. I love
Yeah.
working with kids. I love seeing their excitement and those kind of aha moments come to life for them. So because I believe so much in what I'm doing, the burnout is really hard to get because
Yeah.
I can't really burn out on this mission, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you are currently, you are kind of like the key to that. Now let's talk about Smarty Cat TV a little bit more. And so well, let's walk through how you first get started, because I'm sure like many entrepreneur, there's a lot of triumph before you kind of get to, where the business runs smoothly, and then
mhm.
startups and trying out different ideas and etc. So if you can kind of think back a little bit more, like how, we talked about how you started the Smarty Cat experience, and then like what did you do? Like, is there a kind of epiphany? How long did it took you from the inception of idea to, oh, we're launching a product and it's, getting to the first customers, and then from there then kind of like roll into a more routine business?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the case of Smarty Cat, I got lucky because I wasn't thinking initially I'm going to start a business. It was more so like I've got this problem I want to solve with my own son.
Mm,
And then I got to see that it was popular. So, a lot of businesses is like, how can we start a business? Let's test the market. Let's see if it's needed. Whereas kind of started opposite for me. It was more like people just kept requesting it.
mm-hmm.
So I already had like, at first I wasn't thinking, oh, these are my customers, right? It just
Yeah.
kind of started snowballing. And in the beginning, I made sure to have a business model that was really low risk.
Mm-hmm.
So initially I was going to actually open up, like a space. When I started realizing there's a lot of people that could use this, I was going to rent like a retail space, turn it into like a science lab, and have kids come and do classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually went and had a meeting with the Small Business Administration. They do free consultations.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's thinking about starting a business, that's a resource that you can use. Look up your local SBA. Highly recommend you get a meeting with them.
Yeah.
So I remember I sat down with this advisor, and he had said, whatever movie that is that they say, if you build it, they will come. He said that's the opposite of what you want to do
Yeah. Yeah.
for your business. So I had actually brought him a lease. I was about to sign a lease for this retail space, and he goes, if you do it this way, you will be bankrupt in
Yeah.
probably your first 12 to 24 months. And I was like, okay. And he goes, you've got to think about a way you can start with less overhead, start
Mm-hmm.
smaller and work it up. So then I started thinking, all right, well, that's how I'll just rent a room from a church. And that was, $50 a class. I don't know, something really low.
Yeah.
So that I already knew if I had enough kids to come to the class, my overhead was already covered. And if I
Mm-hmm.
don't get enough kids to run the class, I'll just cancel. I don't have to pay the rent. I don't have to buy
Right.
supplies. We just cancel. So I did that 1 or 2 days a week at the church. And then it became, like I said, more people requesting. So then it became, okay, well, if you want me to come to your school and run a class, great. I have no overhead. They're
Mm-hmm.
providing the space, they're providing the kids. The
Yeah.
only thing I have to pay for is supplies. We're able to just make more and more or get more and more contracts with different schools. And again, if the classes don't run, then you just try again another session or try again at a different school.
Yeah.
So that was really great, especially to get started because you can prove concept. When it became tricky was it is wonderful that it was low risk, but it also kind of put a cap on how big we could take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's also not a huge profit margin either. So
Yeah.
low risk to lose, but
Yeah, so how so I guess I want to kind of go back a little bit more. So there's a potential marketing thing that you're going on over here. It's a word of mouth kind of like
mhm.
model over here. So when you first started getting the customer, I'm guessing that's a friends and families. That's kind of where your first customers are. Yeah.
How did I get the first kid? I put out I sent a postcard, which didn't do any good. Like I just
Mhm.
sent it out to the town that was around that, or was
Yeah,
in that church was in. That didn't really have any response. I I'm trying to think. I think the church, they have a preschool at the church, and I think
gotcha.
that's how the word got out. They just put some bulletins up, and the parents were walking through, and I'm pretty sure that's how my first class. And then it was word of mouth really quickly after that.
Mhm.
But the biggest shift was when the recreation department next door heard about it. And so
Gotcha.
we, instead of advertising directly to parents to get kids to sign up, it very quickly
Yeah,
pivoted to a B2B. So
yeah,
now I'm going and saying to rec departments, hey, do you want to be able to offer awesome science programs? I'll run them for you.
right.
You won't have to do anything, just advertise for us. And then
Mhm.
it became schools where I said the same thing. So I was no longer trying to get in front of parents. I knew that if I get in a school or a rec department, which already has all that infrastructure, they can
Right.
do the promotion, I'll provide the service. And it was
Yeah.
more of a B2B.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great lesson there. I just wanted for our listener to hear to tease it out. It's, hey, when you're running a model, sometimes you gotta let the business taking you where you're at. So take a minute back, a step back, and see like, hey, could a different model like because you may be going out doing a B2C, a business consumer, and then ended up in a B2B model where you haven't even think about. So that's all
Exactly.
options that we should kind of think about it as well. That's awesome. So fast forward a little bit more. So you've now connected with different school, like I think a recreation center. Tell us a little bit more about like how the school system works over there. So I'm guessing you get one recreational center that got you signed up over there, and then there's like a word of mouth because it's all pretty nice, like tight network over there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it got spread out to different school.
Yeah, so the rec departments in the different municipalities all know each other. They all go to meetings together. And
Hmm.
so that's how it spread to rec departments really quickly. And then just from parents seeing, bringing their kids to the rec, then they would say, hey, our school does after school programs. And it's a lot more convenient for me to just let the kid, my child stay after school rather than having to go pick them up and bring them to the rec. What do you
Right.
think, if I present this to my school, would you be open to doing it at school? And so once we got into one, usually it's a PTA that will run the
Yeah.
after school enrichment. Once one PTA picked us up, then it became word of mouth. All the,
Nice.
the towns we worked in usually have like 4 to 6 elementary schools per town. So
Hmm.
once they have it in one, that town, the rest of the PTA
Got
moms
to
are like,
know.
hey, get them in ours.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they have to, they're the ones in charge of putting on all these programs. So
Yeah.
we're helping the PTA out. They're obviously helping us out. It becomes a very symbiotic relationship for sure.
Gotcha. But the other thing you haven't really talked about is like there's the kind of the great marketing strategy or be able to pivot, but there's also the quality of the product. So on the first couple, I would imagine, maybe you can tell me it's wrong, like the lesson that you were running, at your mid growth level is different than when you first started. So what are some lessons that you learned over there, like by launching the product itself? The lesson itself, because it must be a good lesson. That's why everyone else like kind of really loved it. Is there some aspect that's a unique, or like the way that you kind of pivot for your product as well, if you can share a
Do you
little
mean the
bit?
lessons I'm learning or the ones that I were teaching to the kids?
The lesson that you're learning from like just pivoting your product, from the beginning, like your first kid lesson, and then like what's the process that you kind of improved upon the product to something that clearly everybody want a piece of. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it I think I just have a natural, I'm really good with kids. I really love working with kids. I have a good connection. So
Mhm.
it was pretty natural for me to figure out ways to make it fun for them. And
Mhm.
as soon as parents started having their kids asking, hey, I want to do this, and it's educational, it's
Yeah.
great. Once they saw that they were getting that benefit, it didn't take much coercing.
Right.
I could tell that it was a very needed and wanted service that parents were looking for. So of course, our lessons got better over time, seeing what really doesn't resonate super great with the kids and constantly improving upon
Mhm.
that. But from the very beginning, it's been a very, what's the word I'm looking for? We're very like, open-ended with our lessons, if that makes sense. So we don't sit there and lecture the kids. I found a lot of even other after-school programs will sit there and say like, here's your instructions, or if you order like a science kit
Mhm.
from one of those subscription services, here's your box, here's your instructions, do this step 1 through Z. We try to steer away from that as much as we can. It's
Yeah.
much more open-ended. Okay, like real life, right? Like here's your challenge, here's a problem we're trying to solve. here's the materials that you have to solve this problem. Now you are in charge of figuring out how you want to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's, you know, make a little machine that can kick a ball, for example, here's your table full of recycled materials. You tell me how you are going to accomplish that. And
Mm.
we're there to guide and encourage, but we are not there to tell them how to build it, how to do it.
Oh,
So
I
it's,
see.
yeah, it's much more just getting them thinking and creative thinking, problem solving skills. But at the same time, there's so much science you can work into it, right? So like
Yeah.
if we're building like a model roller coaster set, you know, I remember one time a child came up and they said, well, if we make our second hill bigger than our first hill, will it work? And I said, I don't know, you have to try it. Like there's
Yeah.
one way to, I mean, of course I know the answer to that, but it's like, there's one way to find out, test it out, let's see. And then you can explain when they visually see it and do it. Well, why do you think it doesn't work? You know, the
Mhm.
marble loses, you know, energy as it goes, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's been the philosophy from the beginning. We really haven't had to modify that too much.
Mhm.
And I think it really resonates or translates to critical thinking and problem solving skills they'll use for their educational career and for their careers outside of education
Yeah.
once they get older.
And would you say your teaching background had an immense, like, you know, impact to coming up with a great, like, kind of education product over there? If you kind of think back, like what you learned as, you know, teaching degree kind of has something to do with that as well.
Yeah, I actually, I went for a bioscience degree. So
Okay.
I had thought I'll become a bio, you know, what am I going to use it for? Originally I was pre-dental. And then
Yeah.
when I got into college
Huh.
and I was just like, I'm not going to stay in school that long. I don't fit inside that box
Yeah.
super well. I get
Yeah.
great grades, but I have too much creative energy. Like I didn't want to just be a dentist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
No offense to any dentists out there. It just,
Yeah.
I'm too, I don't know,
We all wired
out there.
differently.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So I knew I wasn't gonna be a dentist. Then it was, well, I love working with kids. Maybe I'll be a biology teacher.
Yeah.
But the fit wouldn't have been great for me in the end because I love teachers so much, but I think most teachers can agree that the traditional education system has a lot of flaws.
Mm.
It's so structured around standardized tests, memorization. That creative element, that open-ended problem-solving element is really lacking.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why this took off so much, is because parents know that. They see
Right.
their kids struggling to be excited about learning, and this gives
Yeah.
them that creative outlet, that hands-on space to really explore.
Yeah, because I mean, like, when you're thinking about it, wait, the example that you just give to me over there, I mean, that's a great thing. Because by the way, like, I'm very interested to have my kids like doing this because they're all staying at home. This is like online now. That's accessible. So like, just the fact that you share with me, like, hey, this is how we encourage them thinking. I think that's super important. Versus just kind of teaching them like what's like kind of killed the creative idea, which I think is something that they're really great. But it's almost like amazing where you just grasp onto that concept without going through a teaching degree or any of that, like just having you like just naturally be able to grasp on that concept, like, hey, we're actually encouraging them thinking versus, you know, teaching them 1, 2, 3 steps, because that's
Yeah.
often, you know, even in our preschool co-ops, preschool, we get some of that too.
I honestly wonder if going for the teaching degree would have killed that a little bit. And you know what I mean? Would have made
Yeah.
me steer further away from this just natural
Yeah.
way that I do it. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
End up.
Yeah, and another lesson like is really interesting over there, I just want to highlight for our audience is customer. Put your customer first. Like in your case, your customer is your kids. And then you're really putting their thoughts and needs, like really try to do the goal of like, hey, want them to learn something but have fun,
Mhm.
right? And then that kind of just took off in terms of how you design the product and maybe pivoting around it. Like you mentioned about your kids get bored, like when the kids get bored is when you're going to do the modification to make it more fun. And that's like a very much of a customer oriented process over there. Tell us a little bit more, like after you realized, getting you back at the story there, but you talked about like, hey, now it become pretty cost inefficient to travel around school to school. So what did you do over there in terms of pivot?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it was cost inefficient. It's just the our favorite part. So I took on a business partner in 2010. She's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And so at that point, you know, obviously went from like this one woman traveling science show to I had maybe 5 employees at that point, and then took her on, and then we expanded. We don't do just science anymore. We do all STEAM
Mm-hmm.
projects. So science, tech, engineering, and art is a big
Yeah.
focus, art and hobby also. So we have all these different programs running, and it required a lot of staff, a lot of instructors to be able to go and teach these classes for us. And that structure kind of started to wear us out a little bit, right? Because it's the instructors, we had a lot of great instructors, but not all of them had that passion, right? They're not as excited. Like, I get in the classroom with kids and I see their faces like I'm high-fiving, I'm cheering, I'm as excited as these kids are, right? It takes a certain personality to be that way. So the more that we grew and grew and grew, and the more the infrastructure grew, it was just more and more layers of employees and instructors. And it took us further and further out from what I'm truly passionate about, which is being in front of the kids. I mean, we were running a full staff now at this point.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's funny because we had been trying to figure out for about the past 12 to 24 months pre-COVID, how are we going to make this change? We didn't want to just keep adding on. So it wasn't even so much the cost effectiveness thing, but it wasn't a high enough profit margin to be able to hire out levels of really high quality employees, right?
Yeah.
That's
a challenge for any business. Yeah.
Especially a children's business, because parents can't just pay out, crazy prices. They're already got tons of other expenses. So it was this battle of how do we get quality people, because those are the people that are going to treat us the way we do. And how do we afford that? And so we had started pivoting towards a model of showing other women who were really, or people, I shouldn't say just women, but other people like us who wanted to run something like this, who wanted to be able to work part-time, working with kids, run their own business. How could they do it? Because when you're one person running it and you get to run your own classes, it's great. And if your goal is just to make supplemental income or maybe make a teacher's salary, that's great, right? So we wanted to teach other people how to do that. So we were starting to kind of coach, or we were starting to kind of like partner with people in different areas across the country. And that when we were starting to make that switch, that was when COVID hit. And it was like, okay, we can't do that anymore. We can't teach people how to teach, in-person programs because they don't exist right now.
Right.
So COVID, I mean, completely wiped us out, just really put a huge pause button on everything. We had no idea when we're going to have revenue coming back in. So that was when we really had to take a big step back and go back to the drawing board and say, how are we going to rebuild this in a way that fits the new needs of our customer? Because before it was busy parents who wanted their kids to be able to stay after school. Now it's busy parents who have kids home with them all the time.
Right.
The needs are different, They're not able to just drop their kids off. This is stuff that the parents need to enjoy also. How do they keep it fun and fresh for their kids?
Yeah.
So that's how we've kind of switched to this virtual platform where now my partner and I get to be the face in front of kids again, even though it's via television screen or computer screen. But I think that passion still resonates, and the kids still can get excited about it when they see that whoever's leading it is just as excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you hit on on this really great, I mean, there's so many lessons that we don't have time to all go into. A couple of things I would ask is, when is your first employee? And then how did you go about and hire it? As I'll let you answer that, and then I'll get the other ones.
Yeah. So my first employee, so obviously, like I said, was a one-woman traveling science show. So what I would do is I would book each town. I would do 2 different age groups. So I would do like pre-K to grade 1 would be one class that would come in, and then they would leave immediately after that. I would do grades like 2 through 5.
Yeah.
And then, so I would do that on one town on Monday, and then on Tuesday I would do a different town, and then Wednesday I would do a different town. Well, there's only 5 days in the week, right? I didn't want to do weekend classes. So then once I had all 5 days filled, I couldn't take on any more contracts. So that was when I had to hire my first employee. And then what I would do is they would come shadow me on Monday, because we get to repeat the same lessons. It's new kids in each town, right? So she or he, I had both male and female instructors. They would come watch me on Monday and see how I taught it. And then I would give them the supplies, and then they would go out and do their classes. And then it just kept growing from there as we had more levels of, more contracts. And
so instead of finding like a specialized person, you kind of just replicate yourself. Like, how do I replicate myself? But that's kind of like what you hired. And how did you find out your partner? Because at that time, it's not like, because sometimes people take on a partner, then they hire employee. So you hired an employee first, and then you took on a partner. Right. So, so like, when did you decide that it was a need to hire a partner? And then why is that person a partner versus an employee?
Yeah. So that was kind of a unique situation. So she and I actually started a cupcake catering company together. I met
Mm.
her through a family member, and her and I clicked right away. And she was wanting to start her own thing, and I was like, well, if you want to. She was really into baking, and I love
Mm.
decorating. So we're like, all right, well, let's do a cupcake. You bake the cupcakes, I'll decorate them. This will be
Yeah.
fun. And so we did that, and simultaneous to the cupcake catering, we also started children's baking workshops because, of
Yeah.
course, I naturally just want to teach children everything. So
Yeah.
we learned really quickly. It was way more fun to teach kids how to bake than it was to sell cupcake, $3, $4 cupcakes to
Yeah.
adults
Yeah.
who are super picky. So we finally were like, okay, we really don't want to just bake for, people anymore. It just wasn't our thing. We didn't
Yeah.
love it. We didn't have the passion for it, but we loved working with the kids. And we thought, okay, well, I already run a science program for kids. Now we've got
Right.
a baking program for kids. What if we blend these two together and expand upon not just science and baking, but let's do art. Let's do, like, what other subjects can we do that can then
Hmm.
amplify? I've already got the infrastructure built. I already know how to
Yeah.
get contract. Actually, it worked out perfectly because all of the contracts I had, I was able to go to them and say, hey, I know you love our science program. Now we're offering 10 other
Yeah.
programs.
Yeah.
And that, like, 10x'd our
The
contracts
parallel
overnight.
business idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So doing kind of the couple lesson there, it is like you create a business that may distract you, which is the cupcake business. And then you kind of pivot it into something you realize the benefits of a parallel business, which helps you grow like 10x a lot faster. And just
Absolutely.
kind of, hey, what subject, what language, or that these are all like a really great areas to kind of expand what you already have. So
Exactly.
that's when you take on her, because she would need to help you kind of build all the other stuff together.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Mhm.
at the same time, it just so happened I had moved to Tennessee. Our company's based out of New Jersey. It was fully staffed and at the point where I could run the staff from my laptop. So I
Yeah.
moved out of state, and I had a program manager that I had hired and trained for the 6 months leading up to my move. And
Yeah.
literally the week I moved, she quit. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
remember I was in a furniture store and I sat down on the couch and I'm crying. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this is my, and so I'm talking to her, and her name's Samantha. And she was like, what do you need me to do? Like,
Yeah.
we already run our children's baking programs. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
What do you need me to do for Smarty Cat? And she was my absolute saving grace. And I
Yeah.
just saw how much she just took it on as if it was her own business,
Mm.
that after a month or two, I was like, let's be 50-50 partners on everything. Because if it were an employee, like if she were my employee, it would have been a different type of
Yeah.
relationship.
Interaction. Yeah.
And I don't think the business would have benefited as much as
Hmm.
having her on and it being her business.
Yeah.
It's both of our baby now. So
Yeah.
it just
That's
gets nurtured
awesome.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, kind of fast moving forward, I want to kind of touch on the pandemic, and how that kind of affected this. So, how did you kind of, we already know that you're a self-starter. I think that's a mentality change. A lot of us will say like, no, we can't do this, and just getting crushed by the environment. But you obviously have entrepreneur spirit. So it just kind of took the best out of that. And so on online system, what are something different? Like as you kind of launching this, can you share with us a few, tips, tricks on pivoting that towards an online service? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, when it first happened, because people would say, we're like, what are we going to do? We were in
Yeah.
complete shock. What
Mhm.
are we going to do? At the time I had daycare also, that half the parents were home. So now half those kids, every form of income that I had built up
Yeah.
was kind of, other than my real estate, which thankfully has done pretty well, sustained pretty
Yeah.
well. But I didn't know that at that time too. It's like, what's going to happen with real estate? What's going to happen with,
Right.
this? So at first it was shock and it was digesting it. And what are we going to do? And then my kids are home all of a sudden. Now I've got
Mm.
all four kids home because school's closed for them also.
Right.
So super tough situation. And we did have some people saying to us, well, just go virtual, just run your classes online. It's a totally different type of structure. So
Hmm.
it took us a little bit of time. And I would say that what changed for us was when we realized we don't know what we're doing in this. We don't know what we're doing when it comes to going virtual. We're
Yeah.
not experts in this. We need to reach out to people that are experts in this, because we
Mm.
don't know how to market B2C. We've never done that. Now we have to find these kids for ourselves.
Mm.
We don't know how to run all the virtual stuff, how to do online marketing. We don't know any of that. So we
Yeah.
started setting up phone calls and consultations with people who do know what they're doing when it comes to
Right.
that. And we started getting a couple a little bit of feedback from people that were like, well, this, you know, I guess we were thinking we're just going to run Zoom classes, like do what we've been doing for 12 years, but put it in a computer. And
Yeah.
as we started to tell this to people who are experts in the digital space, they're like, you know, that doesn't really make much sense. You know, every time you have 15 kids hopping on Zoom, you've got to hire another teacher. It was the same infrastructure issues
Right.
as the in-person putting it in digital. And they said, you know, you can scale a lot better with digital if you're doing video content, if you're doing, you know, interactive content, that a subscription service, for example, where
Right.
unlimited amount of people can sign up, and
Hmm.
you're not limited by those small group sizes. So the biggest advice I would give when you have to make a huge pivot, when you're diving into something that's totally unknown, is make sure you're talking to people who can give you a fresh perspective. Because
Gotcha.
same thing as if had I got that retail space, because that's what I was envisioning way back in the
Hmm.
beginning, it would have killed the business.
Yeah.
Same thing if we had tried to apply our old rules from this old structure to the new needs, you know, it
Hmm.
wouldn't have fit parents as well. So getting that mind shift, getting that fresh perspective, and somebody to
Hmm.
say, hey, look at this differently. You're going to rebuild. Think about how you could rebuild it in a way that better fits
Yeah.
the new environment. And that
And
was the biggest thing.
and where do you find these kind of experts? Because before you even dive into a different area, you know, one thing that I'm constantly struggling is like digital marketing. It's a new thing for me. Like, where do you even find people to kind of help you do that stuff? Right.
Yeah, I just
Um,
started asking. I have a pretty big network of investors, especially in the real estate space, and know a lot of people who I know do a lot of awesome things online. So
mhm.
I just started reaching out to everybody. Who do you know? Who helps you with, you know, your digital stuff? Which companies do you use? And it was just through word of mouth that we happened to find the marketing team that we're working with, and who
Yeah.
said that, who kind of made that new blueprint idea for us. Like, hey, what if you did it this way?
Right.
I think you could scale. I think this could be big. I think you could scale a lot better. What if you did like a little TV show, you know, instead
Yeah.
of these one-on-one, which are
That's awesome.
kids don't learn as well through Zoom. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not the same. So
Yeah. So they're a digital marketing team, and as well as because they worked on multiple different people's different projects, so they have some like stuff to offer in terms of giving you advice. Is not just like a label for help for hire per se.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I didn't go online and post a job description saying who can help it. We didn't know what we didn't know, right? We
Right.
just thought who can help funnel us traffic, because we've never had to do that before.
Hmm.
But throughout that process and seeing, we were kind of getting the same feedback, like, you know, I don't know if this is the best way to go about it. But this was the first team that said, I don't know if this is the best way to go about it, but here's a new idea. Have you
Yeah.
ever considered doing this?
Yeah.
And that it was like that aha moment that really changed everything. So I think
Yeah.
if you just, the more people you talk to, the more people give free consultations all the time. Talk to them. You never
Hmm.
know. Somebody will
Yeah.
spark an idea. Somebody will make you think of it from a fresh perspective that you don't know what
Yeah.
you don't know, and
Yeah.
that could change everything. So that would be my advice for sure on that.
That's awesome. And so again, your network is your net worth. I always kind of teach, talking to my student about that too. It's very
Absolutely.
important. This is the power of like networking out there. That's awesome. So where can people find out about Smarty Cat TV? Because I think I've seen some advertisement you guys did, like that you recorded. I'm like, wow, this is like a super awesome. Like interested in testing them out. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. We're going to start to roll out. We're going to do a weekly show, Smarty Cat TV, on the free lessons will air on YouTube. So you can search Smarty Cat TV on YouTube and get plenty of fun free content. And then
Mhm.
if you go to smartycattv.com, that's where we'll have a more in-depth subscription and an interactive platform, and parents can get a little bit more of a deeper experience with us.
Gotcha. That's awesome. All right, shifting gear a little bit, and then we're going to wrap this up. That's an entire different session we're going to get into. But you also run this multifamily women's mastermind, which you also have some real estate investing opportunities or investment that you're making. So, what are your kind of good tips on, building an online community? Like, what got you guys started, and what are some of the summary of the best practices on building online community?
Yeah, I think it all starts with what you mentioned a minute ago. Your network is your net worth is your network,
Yeah.
vice versa. I knew when real estate was totally new for me. Again, I didn't grow up in an environment where investing was ever talked about. I mean,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
So, and actually it was kind of frowned upon. It was you get your pension or your 401k or whatever the normal safe stuff is, right?
Yeah.
And so I never knew anything about investing. But as I got older, it became pretty obvious the more that you follow different people and learn different things. Like, you know, if you really want to create wealth, you've got to start investing. I mean, there's just no way around it. So once I started realizing I wanted to go in the real estate direction, I'm not a stocks kind of person, but I just really got curious about real estate.
Yeah.
I'm just the kind of person that was like, I know that I don't know what I'm doing here. And let me find people who do. And I just really like connecting with people. I like helping people in any way I can. So I never try to, you know, be like a parasite, try to suck information out of other people. I try to make it mutually beneficial. And it was just through talking to so many people and so many other women specifically, because I like the vibe with women, just wanting to create those relationships where people will want to be in that relationship with you too, because it's mutually beneficial. So just from networking and talking to so many different investors, especially in the multifamily space, I realized there wasn't that many groups for women specifically. And there wasn't one that, there's a lot of like beginner groups, but I kind of wanted something a little more high level to challenge myself. And I really didn't find anything there. So the one woman that I had met at my first multifamily meetup, I had kind of called her and said, hey, you know, do you know of any women's groups specifically for multifamily? And she said, no, you know, I was just talking about this with another friend of hers. And she said, we're looking for the same exact thing. And so she goes, you know, why don't we get on a 3-way call? Let's talk about it. So we did. And we're just like, why don't we just start one? You know, we're not finding what we need. We know there's got to be other women that are looking for the same sort of thing. So why don't we just start one? And it was just in that moment. And I got really lucky because I'm new to this and I'm here to learn and try and up my game. And they're both very experienced. So they just kind of trusted me. And I'm able to help with, like you said, building that online community. I can still, even though I am more inexperienced when it comes to the investing side of it, I can still run a group and engage people and ask questions and build those connections, you know. So
that's
I'm
awesome.
able to contribute in that way, luckily.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I think, again, lesson learned there is Michelle just kind of goes out there and then kind of really trading off your time for knowledge. I think that's a big lesson, big Rich Dad Poor Dad time to talk about this. Like, work for knowledge, don't work for, you know, pay. Then you get a job and whatnot. So that's a great lesson. And then of course, we're going to probably have you back sometimes and talk about like building community. Last parting thoughts. You have 4 kids. So what are you teaching them to be financially free or be financially equipped mental wise to become an entrepreneur like yourself?
Yeah, or I wouldn't even say that I say to them they should become an entrepreneur. I don't think everybody should. I think there's plenty of people out there that are very passionate about their jobs, their careers, and that's great. But I think no matter how you bring in your income, obviously I try to teach my kids, do what you love. If you're not going to do what you love, you're going to be burnt out, no matter whether you're working for yourself or somebody else. But no matter how you get your income in, definitely need to be investing, you know, and having your money work for you, because otherwise you make money, you spend it, you make money, you spend it. I mean, it's all transactional and until you die. So trying to teach them, like, if you buy cash flowing assets and then you know, go through that again, I keep referencing the Rich Dad books, but if you can funnel it through cash flowing assets, then you can reach that financial freedom, which of course you teach.
Yeah. So, and then what are some books that you recommend, or do you write books? Like, what are some of the books that you recommend, you know, getting into kind of digitalizing your product and, you know, and expanding your mindset there?
Yeah, I don't know if I have any specific ones for going digital, because we're still kind of new with that. I haven't read a lot of books specific to that, but I do read a lot of mindset books and a lot of entrepreneurial and business books. You know, my favorite book's The Go-Giver. I don't know. It's got a lot of that mindset stuff in there and just talks a lot about that providing value, leading with value. So that book, I probably read that last year, and that was the biggest shift for me happened after reading that book. So I definitely recommend The Go-Giver. There's some that are a little bit more strategic. What's the one that I just finished reading? Of course, on the spot, I'm going to forget. You would know the name of it, I bet. It's all about systemizing everything. I'd have to look it
Is
up.
it the Traction?
Yes,
Yeah, the
Traction.
Traction.
Yep.
Yes, we
Traction's a great
recommend
book.
to our student all the time on the Traction.
Yep,
Great book to kind of systemizing everything.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your time with us today. And we're gonna check out your Smarty Cat. How do we, again, how do we check out Smarty Cat TV?
So you can go on YouTube, Smarty Cat TV. You can go on Facebook, Smarty Cat TV, or you can just come to our website, smartycattv.com.
Nice, awesome. We're looking forward to it. By the time we release this, it will be already available. So check it out, definitely. If you have kids, they're bored out of their mind, this is a great option for that. I know I'm gonna have my kids on this. You know, Michelle, looking forward to working together on multifamily stuff together as well. And congratulations on your product launch.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.